Calling to order this subcommittee meeting of the Education Outreach and Training Committee of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force. Victor, would you call the roll?
This is the meeting for April 17th, 2018. On the call the roll, Member Eldon. We have a quorum. There are no agenda changes that I know of at this time. Next on the agenda is item number 2, adoption of the minutes for the February 20th, 2018 Education Outreach and Training Committee meeting.
All right. Is there a motion to go ahead and approve the minutes at this point in time?
I'll make a motion to approve.
With a slight amendment proposed by the SFMTA in that I misspelled adjournment on it.
You misspelled the what?
Adjournment.
Adjournment.
All right. Victor, if you can make that change, and I believe Member Fisher's making a motion to approve the minutes with that change. Is that correct?
Yes, I was not here, so I'm.
It's fine.
That's why I'm doing that, and then.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Seconded by Member Eldon. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Or technically on the motion? Thank you. Seeing none, go ahead and call the roll.
On that motion, Member Eldon.
Aye.
Eldon, aye. Member Fisher.
Aye.
Fisher, aye. Chair Wolf.
Aye.
Wolf, aye. The motion passes. Next on the agenda is item number 3, public comment. Members of the public may address the Education Outreach and Training Committee on matters that are within the committee's jurisdiction but not on today's agenda.
Is there anyone here that would like to give a public comment not on an item on today's agenda? Seeing none, go ahead and move on to the next item.
Next on the agenda, file number 18001, complaint filed by Julian Sakar against Jose Cisneros and the Office of the Treasurer and Tax Collector for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 67.21 by failing to respond to a request for public records in a timely and/or complete manner.
All right, before we begin, let's see if both parties are here. Is Mr. Sakar here? Great, thank you. You can go ahead and take a seat at this point. And is there someone from the Office of the Treasurer and Tax Collector here? Wonderful, thank you. All right, so is there a motion for a determination of jurisdiction on the complaint?
So moved.
Great. Second, and we don't need to vote on that, right, Victor?
We can take that.
With the motion later?
Yes, we can hold on this for now if you'd like.
Great. All right, let's go ahead and hear from both parties. We'll start with the complainant. You have, is it 5 minutes or 3?
Yes, we've been going with 5 minutes.
You have 5 minutes to go ahead and explain why you have filed this complaint against the Office of the Treasurer and Tax Collector with the Sunshine Task Force. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much. My name is Julian Sarkar, Julian Sarkar. So this complaint arises out of the tax collector sending me a letter dated October 20th of last year, threatening to penalize me. Oh, microphone issues?
Keep going.
You still hear me, right?
You're coming through.
We have speakers here.
So the letter is dated October 20th, 2017 from the tax collector. It was sent to my home address. It was addressing me by my informal nickname, Jules Sarkar, which leads me to believe they did not get this information from, for example, California Franchise Tax Board or the IRS. And what the letter said, which I believe the letter is one of the documents the tax collector is withholding, this letter said that we're going to penalize you unless you register yourself as a business. So under that threat, I went forward and did that. I talked to some other people, and I couldn't find anyone else who had received this letter, threatening them if they didn't register themselves as a business. So I submitted, a records request and inquiry. On the first one was, the first one was on November 30th. Asking them for any documents that they had pertaining to me, also pertaining to me under my informal nickname of Jules Sarkar. And I didn't receive a response, as you may have, if you've read through the respondents' papers as well as mine, you've probably seen that. They claimed that they treated it as a correspondence, but it's not clear if that means that they have a policy to just completely ignore correspondence. There's no response to that. I continue to get correspondence saying, now that you're a business, you have to meet these other requirements. And so, and it also in this letter, it wasn't strictly a records request. I provided some background information explaining the nature of the request and sort of contesting, what they had said. And I didn't receive a direct response to that. So I sent a follow-up request on December 19th. And I didn't get any response to that. So eventually, I filed this Sunshine Ordinance complaint. I also submitted another records request, a more comprehensive one, on January 3rd of this year. Now, I understand from the documents that have been submitted by the tax collector claims that they try to reach out to me. If you look at the documents, it shows that it's sent to a different email address. That's not mine, so I couldn't have received that. It does seem a little odd to me that in the latest brief filed by the respondent, it says that they attempted to send some documents to me and it was returned as undelivered, but in these previous attempts, they didn't produce as a record an email showing that they attempted to contact me and it was undeliverable. And so I'd also like to raise the issue as to whether or not my January 3rd records request is included as a part of this. I did submit it immediately after or concurrently with submitting this Sunshine Ordinance request. I believe it's included with the packet on jurisdiction going back to January. So it's my position that there should be jurisdiction as to whether or not that was timely responded to. But let me get to the substance of this request and what I believe the tax collector is saying is the reason that they don't have to produce any documents. They have produced some documents, so the tax collector has sent me the letters that I sent to them in response to my records request for all records pertaining to me, which is clearly not what I'm asking for. And there are also some other emails saying, within the office saying, here's the letter from Julian Sarkar. But aside from that, they claim that all of those documents, the ones that they're withholding, which they don't identify, by the way, there's no, it doesn't say that we're identifying these particular types of documents. I see I'm running out of time.
You're
30 seconds left.
Oh, I'm sorry. You have 30 seconds.
So let me get to the public interest matter. There's at no point, so the tax collector eventually said, if you're not running a business, we'll undo this. So it's clear that they never had any kind of basis for sending me this threatening letter. It's not clear. There's a stronger public interest in finding out why they're sending these letters, why they're threatening people, forcing them to register businesses, than there is to say that we can't release this information, it'll interfere with our ability to collect taxes.
All right.
There's no tax collection here.
Thank you. You'll have an opportunity for a rebuttal at the end, and we also will probably be asking you questions that'll give you a chance to say things that you didn't get a chance to say. Do either of my colleagues have any questions for?
Do we wait until, I have questions, but shouldn't we be waiting until we hear from the respondent first?
We should allow
Yeah.
the respondent to make their testimony before asking
Sure.
questions.
Go ahead. If you can sit down, we'll be back with questions.
Thank you. I'll try to keep track of the time better.
Actually, you're not timed on the responses.
If the respondent could please approach. And you'll also have 5 minutes to formulate your statement.
Okay. Teresa Buckley for the Office of the Treasurer and Tax Collector. I am the custodian of records for the department as well as the tax collector attorney. I want to begin my presentation with a quick overview of how our department's organized because I think it's important to understand our various sections to explain the larger picture of what happened here. So the treasurer and tax collector has two parts. We have a treasurer that does all of the normal treasurer functions of a county, such as managing the bank accounts for the county and whatnot. We also have a bigger portion is the tax collector portion. This is the group that collects property tax, business taxes, the legal section, my section is within this as well as the Bureau of Delinquent Revenue. These various divisions of the tax collector work somewhat independently. office is a busy one. We receive approximately 1.2 million pieces of mail in any given year. We registered approximately 15,000 businesses within the city last year. We also, on the property tax side, have over 200,000 separate parcels that we go for property tax. On the business tax side, the vast majority of our interactions are conducted online with people through our website. This is important because Mr. Sarkar had interactions with a couple different sections of our office. Now, on to the PRA, the subject at hand here. I want to begin by acknowledging that our office did indeed fail to respond to Mr. Sarkar's original November 30th letter. That letter was received by our office on December 6th, 2017. It was misidentified as a standard business tax correspondence. The trigger did not go off to think that this was a records request, and it never made its way to me. So I apologize for that. That was our mistake. We do not contest that. When the second request came in from Mr. Sarkar, he states it was dated or delivered December 19th. We actually didn't receive it until December 28th, and I believe that documentation is in our filing. Immediately upon receipt, we took tremendous effort to locate the original request. We found it. We sent an email to Mr. Sarkar, which I understand was slightly off by one letter in the email address, so it may not have made its way to him. In any event, we did respond to the second request in a timely manner. There was a third request that then came to our attention in January that was also responded to. I'd be happy to go into further detail about the big picture of what happened here, but I think that might be best left to the question and answer. But to summarize, I will say that we did respond. We provided whatever documents that we believed were relevant, that were public records. There were additional documents that were the subject of the request about how we received Mr. Sarkar's home information that are confidential. They're confidential as business, under the Business and Tax Regulations Code, Section 6.22-1. They're also confidential as official information that was provided to our office in confidence that we could not disclose. With that said, I would like to end my presentation here and leave the substance of the questions and answers as they arise.
Can you repeat that code for 6.22-1?
Yes, the San Francisco Business and Tax Regulations Code, 6.22-1. And it relates to information received by our office that is either in a tax return. I can read it to you. I only have 55 seconds.
It's a question. You're not timed for that part.
Okay. The information in a taxpayer's return is confidential, as is any information the tax collector learns about a taxpayer's business from the taxpayer or in response to the tax collector's request for information made under Section 6.4-1 or 6.5-1. Information regarding the tax collector's investigation of a particular taxpayer, including the fact that the tax collector has sent a request for information to a particular taxpayer or is investigating a particular taxpayer, is also confidential.
I would just like to confirm that that is Business and Tax Regulation Code 6.22-1.
Yes.
Thank you.
Section 8.
Great, thank you.
Any
Question?
Well-
additional?
She still has 52 seconds.
You still have 20 seconds or 50 seconds left.
It's just like, no, that's it for now.
All right, thank you.
I have a question for the complainant.
Go ahead and stay there.
No,
Go ahead.
My question's for the complainant.
Oh,
Mr.
for the
Sarkar.
complainant. If you can go ahead and have a seat.
So I read, can I go this way? And I can actually see him? Okay. So I read through this, and something really similar happened to me back in 2004. So I want to make sure that I'm getting this right. Like, I kept reading in your very well written testimony.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Clearly.
I caught some of my own typos.
Well, that's okay. I mean, clearly your law school tuition is being well spent. at Hastings or wherever you are. Yes. So here's my question. I saw that you had a registration for BAN 1079941.
That's right.
The way you presented this, it was like, you're coming after me, blah, blah, blah. Had you filed for that, say, in the past for some other reason, and then you weren't using it or you were canceling it, and then 2 years go by and now they're telling you you're delinquent? Is that what happened? Because I'm a little lost here.
No, not at all. I had never, I actually didn't know until I got this letter that there is a, San Francisco, that there's this chapter of San Francisco law. I've never registered any kind of business or.
Oh, so you've
operated
never
business.
registered at all?
Oh, I'm
Never?
sorry. So I did in response
Okay.
to the initial letter after I got it, right? So I got the letter from them. That initial letter was on.
So help me understand this. Well, let me give you my example, and you can say, oh, no, that's totally different. So back in 2003 or 4, I was doing a contract job. I'm an engineer, and it was a contract gig for some contracting company. And they said, oh, you have to have a business license. And I'm like, I've never had that before. Oh, no, you have to do it. Back then, Ms. Buckley, they were like $25. They were dirt cheap. So I registered. And then the next year came time to renew, and I thought, well, I don't really need it, but it's only $25. So I registered again. Then I took a full-time gig, regular job, and I wrote to the treasurer and said, hey, I don't need this anymore. Put it back in for somebody else. And they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, no, I don't need it. 4 years later, I get a bill for a delinquent saying that I owed them, I don't know, $300. And I will say it didn't get to the level of having to file a sunshine ordinance, but it was a good 9 months of back and forth saying, I canceled it. Here's the email. I don't need it anymore. This is where I work. What's going on? And funny, it was the same person that was on yours until finally enough back and forth that they finally said, oh, so you haven't had a business? Well, you still need to file an affidavit saying you closed your business, blah, blah, blah. What I'm hearing you say is that you never even did that in the first place. Like, I'm going to have to ask the respondent, like, do you just go out looking for people to register businesses? This is confounding to me. I don't understand this at all. And my chair is waving his hands at me, and I'm trying to avoid his gaze.
I'll let him finish, but before we call on the respondent, I think we can add some sunshine. So go ahead.
So yeah, that's absolutely right, and that's part of what I believe is the strong public interest in making the tax collector.
Okay, but you hang on. You still didn't answer my question that I asked.
Yes.
Why would you register for something when you didn't have a business in the first place? Like, what reason would you register and then receive this BAN 1079941?
The letter said it would penalize me if I didn't register.
But you're not a business. You're a law student and a part-time worker.
So that's another thing that I address in this brief. There's one of the sections, and this is how this is as well how it's represented on the website. The website, it includes the. So let me give the statute numbers.
Okay, because I willingly registered.
Let me just stop this, and we can go back to it in a second. And now you don't actually need to answer this question, but I think it'll help illuminate it if you're comfortable to. Do you happen to be involved in one of the gig-based businesses? Is that possibly how the tax collector obtained your information?
No, he's a lawyer.
At the time, no. I've signed up for. I mean, it's a possibility that I've gone to some of these trainings for Caviar, for example, in Postmates.
That's how.
And so that's what I want to find out is if you you show up for one of these trainings and then you get a letter saying now you owe you have to register yourself as a business so that's a possibility. I wasn't doing it at the time.
And you haven't driven for Uber or Lyft or have an Airbnb in San Francisco?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So it is a possibility.
Okay, because I willingly signed up. So okay. I just, if someone told me you have to sign up for this, but I'm not a business, okay. So maybe this is the question that we would ask Ms. Buckley.
Right. I mean, my concern is that I didn't. I just threw the letter in the recycle, and then I get a bill saying, well, you didn't timely do this. Now you owe,
So the initial letter that you didn't think mattered, what did that say? Register or?
It said that I would be penalized if I didn't register. I believe
Okay.
that's one of the documents that's being withheld. But to get back to your question as to going through the process, so one of these subsections of the business code, the business and tax code, that's called they call it the nexus. Basically, it's the determination as to whether or not you're liable under the statutes. My understanding, and I start that if you go to page P13, it stretches out into P14 a little beyond that, but that's where there's a nexus statute. It's 6.2-12 of the Business and Tax Regulations Code, and that says that, among other things, there's a long list of items, including if you're using the roads. There's one subsection that says if the person is sorry, let me get to subsection T. If you're performing work for more than 7 days in the city, let me give the full. It says performing work or rendering services within the city for all or part of 7 days. And that's why I've made this records request in part. I know it can't answer all of these questions, but it might lead to finding out, for example, is a tax collector coming after students from Lowell High School who are helping out their teacher move boxes for 7 days for $25, and now all of a sudden they owe, the tax collector sends a letter to their house saying, you have to register yourself as a business. You work for more than 7 days. You have to pay $200. And so I don't believe that, on the response that I heard just before this, the tax collector has said that has made the contention that there is, for example, a tax liability in this particular situation, that I meet the definition of taxpayer within, as I mentioned that here too, I believe it's, let's see, taxpayer, sorry for not being one more pairs to the specific.
You can.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I have a question of the respondent now.
Okay,
Is that,
all right,
yeah.
thank you.
What was her
Go
name?
ahead.
Teresa? Miss Buckley?
Chair.
Okay, what in heck happened here? So my story was I willfully signed up, paid the back then $25, renewed it, and then, quote, canceled it. And then 4 years later was told I was 4 years in arrears and all these terrible things happened and I had to file affidavits and it was a big mess. But you know what? I signed up for it. What happened here?
I'd be happy to go into that. I will say that some of this involves somewhat confidential information about Mr. Sarkar's dealings with our office. If he's comfortable disclosing that information here at this open hearing, I'd be happy to do that.
I'm open to questions. I'll refuse to answer them if they're.
Well, be careful here. If
Wait,
she
just
says
hold up.
something.
As chair, let me interfere here. So it sounds like the city representative is asking you to waive rights of confidentiality. I don't know whether it makes sense for you to engage in that on an ad hoc basis without knowing what it is that the member of the city has to share with you personally. So I think that the best way, in terms of whatever information you possess, to move forward is to review it before. This is just an interim hearing, and then it will go before the full task force. And I ask that the two of you work together on whatever information she has so that you can, Mr. Sarkar, use an informed opinion to waive any confidentiality so that we don't find ourselves putting on public record information that should never be public.
Thank you.
So with that said, I think I could respond with a broad.
Yeah, let's go hypothetical. Let's go with that.
So in your situation, it sounds like we clearly had a mishap with your intent to cancel your registration. It didn't get through to.
That happens.
Well, like I said at the beginning, our office has a lot of different sections. We have a business tax office that's very good at generating the bills, the original filings, assign your business account number, the BAN, so to speak. And we have a Bureau of Delinquent Revenue that's actually in a different building. They collect the revenue on business registrations if it doesn't come in, and those two aren't perfectly synced. And that's the way it is. It's a very large organization. Like I said, 1.2 million pieces of mail coming through all the time. There are misses. The big picture of what we do for you, you registered, you told the city, I'm an independent contractor in the city for more than 7 days. you are subject to the requirement to file,
Mhm.
and you did it. We have, and you came to us directly, we do rely on people willingly coming to us and filing. It is a self-reporting system in the United States. On tax day, we are here. It's the same thing.
How ironic.
I know, right? Sometimes we have to cast a wide net to find information on all of the people who are required to register with the city in the self-filing system. Not everyone knows, because the independent contractor requirement, for example, is an unusual one if you're used to being, say, W-2 employee. So we gather information on people who we believe are potentially responsible for filing. We use a variety of sources as part of these tax collection efforts. They include our investigators walking around the city and finding businesses or potentially finding things happening and following up on that. It includes tips. It includes requests for information officially from our office, among other things, as part of gathering information about people potentially meeting this requirement to register within the city. If someone's identified, we sometimes do send correspondence out asking them to register, but still at the end of the day, it's only if it's required. And you have to be doing business for 7 days or more as an independent contractor. And I'll note that our registration requirement website, where people do file the declarations to say affirmatively that I am running a business in the city, or I am not, and I'm not subject to this, it notes that you do not need to register if you are already registered, or if you do not conduct business in San Francisco, or if you are no longer in business, which would have been your situation had our website been in place at that time. And the third item, which means you're not subject to the requirement, is if you are an employee and not an independent contractor. So before people even get into the system of registering, they go through this website where they have a prompt to tell them, if you need to opt out, this is your chance. This means you don't meet the criteria. So we have controls in place, and we don't want people registering if they shouldn't. But this is the way we do it, because we do have to cast a broad net and make sure that people are in compliance.
So I have a two-part question. I'm going to keep it really short. So I had a roommate. He was in his, third year of law school, and over the summer he had picked up an internship, and he got paid on a 1099. So that's obviously more than 7 days. Does that? I mean, he's a law student. Does that constitute? Should he have registered for that law school internship with, lawyer, and lawyer incorporated?
Okay, well, so I'll say just at the outset, whether people are subject to the business registration requirement is not the subject of the sunshine hearing, but I'll point you to the statute that was already cited, and it does say
Well, it sounds pretty similar to what he's up against. That's why I asked.
that's not the subject of this hearing, so.
We got to talk about this hearing.
Yeah, let me,
That is this year.
Mr.
That's what this kid did. He's a lawyer.
I'm sorry, I don't have your name in front of me. Mr. Sarkar, if you can approach the. The microphone, sir. Thank you.
Simple 6721, and we move on.
All right, so I have experience with the business tax filing as a business as various independent contractors, and have walked through what Member Fisher described from being a blogger and then not remembering and actually leaving the city for 10 years and coming back to a huge fee because I had no idea how to business. So I've been through this process from most of the angles. When you went online to the business tax portal, did you mark that you did not have a business when asked that question?
It did not. I don't recall it asking me that question. What I recall is the question that I just presented the example, pertaining to that if you were working in the city for more than 7 days, and that's the question that triggered that. Yes, you have to register.
All right. And have you gone through visiting the actual tax collector's office, which I think is just downstairs during business hours, to try to untangle this through that mechanism yet?
I never tried going in person. I didn't think that. I thought that since my I sent a letter and I got no response to it that wouldn't yield any better results. So they probably just turned me away as well.
Sure. So I can't, it's outside of the scope of this hearing, but my experience in dealing with our tax office is that I can't get anything done through the phone or through letters, and going in person takes forever, but eventually sometimes I have to go back like 2 days in a row. I've managed to untangle any of the problems I found myself ensnared in. Our purview as an agency with the task force is not to help untangle a business tax that you shouldn't be charged for. There is already a violation that the tax office has acknowledged about not responding to the original request in a timely manner. In addition to that, there are records that pertain to the answers you're seeking about how they got your name in the first place, that they are citing some confidentiality regulations around. Do you want to continue pursuing, trying to find out where they got this information?
Yes, I do.
All right. So I think really for the scope of what we're doing today, and probably most of the hearing whenever it's scheduled before the full board, is really looking at those documents, what documents may exist, what their claims to confidentiality on a piece-by-piece basis of each document is, and sort of unraveling whatever the law will allow us to unravel so that you can get the answers you're looking for. Does that help?
It helps, and I just want to make clear that, I'm not asking the task force to determine whether or not the way that the tax collector is acting is constitutional, or determine whether or not, there's tax liability. But these questions, the one that was just asked to the tax collector, these other scenarios, I believe that they're important to the public interest prong, which shows that, the interest in revealing these documents is much greater than what the tax collector, is saying. We need to be able to collect taxes, even though in this case they said, oh, well, if you were never running a business. So those records, they would show, for example, if that it was an unreliable tip. If somebody just says, on toilet paper, this person at this address, his nickname is running a business. Go after.
Great. So I hear you.
Right.
If the committee meetings of the Sunshine Task Force were published on SF.gov TV, perhaps this larger issue that you're trying to eliminate would have more value. But as it is, nobody's going to hear this meeting beyond the scope of this meeting, and except for some random people here and there and my fellow task force members, perhaps. So perhaps when you appear in front of the full task force, you'll have an opportunity to sort of lay out some of this public interest stuff, and a different chair will guide that process. But as far as I'm concerned, really all that we need to continue working on is what documents exist that meet what you were requesting, that they are claiming are confidential, and whether they really are, and everything else I think is sort of a different venue.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Yeah, I just don't know what records are out there. So.
Sure thing. Do either of my colleagues have any questions for Mr. Sarkar before I ask a couple questions of the respondent?
Good, go ahead.
All right. Thank you. You can go ahead and sit down. All right. So let's start with this. How many documents in numbers? Just hear me out, then you can respond or say you need to look it up. How many documents in numbers were you able to identify but not turn over to Mr. Sarkar because there's a confidentiality claim?
I can't respond with the exact number, but I can get that to you.
Great. So when this comes back, not only should you have identified each of those documents, but unless your office doesn't agree with this conclusion, it is my understanding that the actual existence of those documents, even if every word was confidential, the fact that that document exists with some sort of unique identifying name of the document or number is still accessible. So in other words, an index of the withheld records is still within the purview of Mr. Sarkar. You're sort of...
I believe that an index, we could maybe indicize the number, but I don't know that if we have an index that might defeat the whole purpose of confidentiality, so I'm not sure that we could agree to that.
Well, I mean,
Not violating confidentiality.
it could just say, two-person communication as a document, or it could say, data drop from source. Like, it doesn't need to reveal anything, but there should be a way to understand in a completely non-identifiable way what these documents are so that we can sort through why they are confidential or aren't confidential. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so kind of like a privilege log or something of that sort, so.
That's outside my legal knowledge, but I think something like that sounds about right.
Yeah, we can pull that together.
Great. Awesome. Any questions for the respondent from either of my colleagues? All right. We can go ahead and move on to rebuttals, and then we'll make a motion and have public comment.
Would you like to provide any rebuttal? It's not necessary if you don't have one.
I just briefly want to make sure that it's clear for the subcommittee that the office did respond to each of the requests. We admit that it wasn't timely with respect to that first request, but there was a representation made in the opening remarks by Mr. Sarkar that our office didn't respond to, for example, the second request. That is not true. I personally oversaw the response to that. It was emailed and mailed via U.S. mail. I believe that was provided to him it was mailed to him, but I believe it was also reiterated in response to his third request, which we also responded to by email and U.S. mail. The response to the original request was subsumed within the questions of the second response, and that was addressed as well. That's all.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Sarkar?
I'll just add that, as I noted earlier, some of these, I haven't gotten all of these, several of the correspondences that Ms. Buckley is referring to. You can actually see from the records that she's provided to the task force that they're sent to the wrong email address. I haven't gotten all the ones that claim to have been sent by mail. I believe some of them say email only. And so, I know I've already said that, but Ms. Buckley's also represented again that, she did email me. So I'll just add that, and it is reflected, I believe, on the record, some of the documents that they provided the task force. So I could never receive them.
Anything else?
That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Barkley?
Just to interject, have you received those at this time? The documents that have been referenced by the Treasurer Tax Collector?
So I've gotten everything.
I just want to make sure that there's...
I believe that I've received everything that either through the task force or, so if not directly from the tax collector, I've got it from the tax force.
That's all I have.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Barkley, can you approach? Buckley, I'm sorry. I don't have it in front of me. Can you go ahead and resend? It sounds like there was at some point an email glitch. So can you just go ahead and resend everything that you originally believe that you've sent to Mr. Sarkar one more time with the proper email address, just so that when we come in next month, there isn't still a potential this document got lost in the mail situation? And then also in the intervening time, if you can get with Mr. Sarkar to discuss the confidentiality waiver and however that needs to be handled so that it's not sprung upon the venue at the time and putting Mr. Sarkar in a difficult position.
Okay.
Great. Thanks so much.
Oh, wait, we could still make a motion to recommend to the...
We haven't made any motions or discussions or heard public comment yet. That was just closing off
Well, the
pieces.
motion, then comes the public comment.
Yes,
There
thank
is
you.
a pending motion to find jurisdiction, and I would like to suggest that we amend that to refer the matter to the full task force for hearing. So the motion I would suggest is to find that the task force has jurisdiction, that the records are public, and to refer the matters to the full task force for hearing.
So
I would like to do a 25A, just for the lateness. Get that in the record.
I think that we should go ahead are you making a motion right now?
I would like to.
All right. If Member Fisher's motion, if Member Fisher is,
I will use my own words.
can I?
Go ahead.
If Measure Fisher is amenable to the motion to go ahead and identify that as a likely violation while looking at other violations pertaining to confidential documents.
You guys can do whatever you want. I just want to make a motion to recommend, our chair of the whole committee prefers that we send motions with violations so they don't have to sift through them. So I would like to make a motion on 6725A for non-immediacy of response, or for them being late.
Just to restate, I believe the motion is to find that the task force has jurisdiction, that the records are public records, and to refer the matter to the full task force with a recommendation to find a violation of Sunshine Ordinance Section 67.25A.
And I can live with that. I need a second.
Does the seconder agree?
I was going to propose 6721.
Yeah, why?
It seemed more basic, a more basic description of. I mean, because they didn't respond the first time.
I don't know.
21
This
seemed
was
too
not
broad
an
for me.
immediate disclosure request to start with, so 67.21 would be more appropriate, I believe. It wasn't
Yeah,
an
right.
immediate disclosure request.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
67.
but 25 is also for the 10-day. Whatever, I can
But
live with that.
it wasn't an
What he
IDR.
said. All right, whatever he said.
So I believe that'd be 67.21.
Sure.
Great. So we have a motion and a second. Any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, go ahead and call the roll.
On that motion, Member Eldon.
Aye.
Eldon, aye. Member Fisher.
Aye.
Fisher, aye. Chair Wolf.
Aye.
Wolf, aye. The motion passes. This matter will be forwarded to full task force. The parties will be notified when that is scheduled. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda. Item number 5, file number 18017, complaint filed by Aaron Goodman against the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency for allegedly violating Administrative Code, Section 67.7 and 67.7-1, by taking action on an item prior to posting an agenda.
All right, and before we begin, is Mr. Goodman here? It looks like that's probably who's approaching. And is there someone from the MTA here? All right, wonderful. We got our players. We're good to play ball. All right, Mr. Goodman, if we can get 5 minutes on the scoreboard. And whenever you're ready.
Good day, Commissioners. I handed Mr. Victor Young a copy of kind of a summary.
Give 1 moment. Sorry. Mr. Goodman did hand out additional documents at today's meeting. I have them in my hand. I did not pass them out until you can make a determination of whether or not you believe you can review them at this late time.
So personally, I think that there's a good chance we can review them, but the larger board has really been moving towards not reviewing documents on the day of, and given the fact that this is an interim hearing and that document can be put into the file for the future meeting, with your permission, I'd like to go ahead and do that and avoid the discussion.
Accepted very much so.
Wonderful. Now you're giving us the documents we agreed not to look at.
Oh, so we're getting the documents?
No, I said that it doesn't matter. I really don't care one way or another.
Hey, we're a subcommittee. I think we should be able to look at these.
All right. Go ahead, Mr.
Sorry,
And
it's
if we can get one to the MTA as well.
time.
Oh, he'll restart you.
You can go ahead and talk while our...
Okay. A quick summary of the issues I handed there.
Please.
One is that we had contacted via email members of the SF Water Task Force, SFDPW, and Sustainable Streets Division regarding a meeting on June 3rd, 2017 on this actual project, which is a engineering project for 45-degree parking along Lisbon Street. The actual memo addressed some of these concerns that I had with the actual project, and some of them were related to safety, speed along the street, the fact that many residents did not speak English or were unaware of the project's impacts. On November 3rd, there was a properly duly notified and posted hearing for a traffic engineering hearing regarding this project. At that hearing, I attended along with Joel Roos, who is from the Jewish Home of San Francisco, and the D11 Supervisor's Aide, Kathy Mulkey-Meyer. We spoke to Tom Folks, who's here today, along with Mike Hanrahan, who was the chair of that meeting, the traffic engineer, about the concerns. And we presented, there's a color document that I handed to Mr. Young for the later meeting. It's in black and white in the documents you have, where I had outlined a lot of the concerns and issues with putting in a wall of metal, in essence, along Lisbon Street, and some of the concerns that we had as a homeowner in the area and a person concerned about traffic safety, who has seen people almost get hit because of speeding cars on Lisbon Street, and wanting to see a more comprehensive project that dealt with the water issues, that dealt with traffic, that dealt with speed, bioswales, dealing with a lot of issues, a myriad of issues there. But we thought that the Jewish Home and the Supervisor's Aide and the SFMTA were going to work with us on this and try to come up with an amicable solution. The following meeting was held in private with the SFMTA, the Jewish Home developer, and the Supervisor's Aide after the November 3rd meeting. They posted the minutes on November 29th, and then the follow-up meeting was on December 5th of 2017. There was no outreach to me, even though at the November 3rd meeting it was requested by Mr. Hanrahan that the SFMTA outreach to me about the different proposals and different options I had suggested, and if anything could come from that in terms of a solution that would be amicable to all parties and see this project go forward. Parking is an issue that we're all hopeful to see change there. The actual original petitioner who petitioned for this actual project would like to see the ability of people visiting her being able to park across the street. It's a very in-demand area of parking, and therefore I think that's why the SFMTA was pushing this project forward so quickly to get it done. On item number 10.1, it actually states requested by the District 11. It doesn't say requested by residents. There was an item earlier today at the SFMTA hearing, item number 6, where they talked about community requested or community driven projects. This project was not driven by the community. They did an initial petition, but other than that, there was no feedback and back and forth to the community members about this design. On December 19th, after the December 5th hearing, where they approved the item at the full SFMTA board, without actually considering the fact that there were people at the November 3rd meeting, and pretty much the summation of that November 3rd meeting is that people were not in support of the project. So I don't know how it got pushed forward to the December 5th board meeting. Maybe that's just my not understanding the issue, but December 19th, Mr. Tom Folks sent out an email to me about this. He mentioned that there was an unknown rumor at the December 5th hearing that no one seemed to know about making the street one way. If there was stuff that people didn't even understand was going on, why was it approved at the December 5th meeting? On January 2nd, there was an email from the D11 aide, Kathy Mulkey-Meyer, that they said SFDPW had issues with the project, and the SF Fire Department had issues with the restricted access to the back of the property. So why was that item once again moved forward to the December 5th MTA full board meeting for approval? The SFMTA cited a number of things in their response from the different sections. In regard to those items, there's a couple items in there. If requested, the agency agenda shall be made available in appropriate alternative forms. We had mentioned the issue of providing language translation assistance to residents in the neighborhood. Item 67.7D, it says on the end of that, I'm not going to read the whole section, or requesting staff to report back to the body at a subsequent meeting concerning the matter raised. And in response, one more item, they had 67.7-1. They didn't address the issue of translation of documents and the issue of concise and written, meaning to be posted documents in the area. They did mention that in their response on the March 12th item, where they mentioned transportation codes.
All right, thank you, Mr.
I'll follow up later with this.
Cheers. All right, thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Roberta Boomer, and I'm with the Office of the SFMTA Board of Directors. The complaint before you today alleges that the December 5 meeting of the SFMTA Board of Directors was not properly noticed. That is really the sum of the complaint before you today. In my March 9 response, I did provide to you evidence. So, as you all know, agendas of policy bodies are governed by 67.71 of the admin code that states that an agenda must be written in English, easily understood by a person of average intelligence and education. It must be posted on the website. It must be posted at the public library. It must be posted right outside the meeting location. It also is required to be mailed or emailed to people who have asked to be on our mailing list. I've provided you with all documentation that shows that the agenda for December 5 was properly noticed. It contained the date, the time, the location, everything that needed. So there was no violation in this case that the agenda wasn't properly noticed. It was. The other issue has to do with the November 3rd Transportation Division Transit Engineer public hearing. So what the complainant alleges is that Division 2 of the Transportation Code, which outlines the responsibility of the transit of the traffic engineer, he's alleging that those rules that apply to the traffic engineer apply to the MTA board. They do not. So the traffic engineer is required before acting to hold a public meeting. And the Division 2 of the Transportation Code requires and stipulates that there has to be mailed notice, it has to be posted, etc. And Mr. Goodman has just testified before you that those requirements were met. In addition, we provided you the affidavit that proved that the requirements for posting were met. So that's not in question. I think there's just confusion that this section of the Transportation Code applies to the MTA Board of Directors. The MTA Board of Directors, again, is governed by 67.7, not by the Transportation Code Division 2. I think that is about all I have to say. I do have Mr. Tom Folks here if you have questions about the transportation traffic engineer's hearing process. He knows about that. I don't. So, if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Does your colleague want to make any statement with the remaining 1 minute and 45 seconds, or is he just here for questions?
Actually, he's a party. He could have a whole other 5 minutes, right?
It's the same
5
party.
minutes per department.
He's the same party.
Thought it was anybody that wants to put facts and evidence, no?
Okay, Tom Folks with the SFMTA. I'm a senior engineer. I just want to say that we did comply with the regulations for posting the engineering public hearing. The requirement before we forward anything to the SFMTA board for their approval is that there be a public hearing. And normally that's our engineering public hearing. Sometimes we'll have the hearing at the board, and then we'll do a special posting for the hearing that occurs at the board. But in this case, the public hearing occurred before the board meeting. We received comments from, there were 3 people who attended the November 3rd public hearing. Mr. Goodman, an aide from Supervisor Safai's office, and a representative from the Jewish Home. All 3 were basically expressed support for the 45-degree angle parking. Mr. Goodman had some concerns about how it would look and had some landscaping suggestions for installing the 45-degree parking. After the public hearing, I wrote up a summary of what happened at the public hearing, expressed those concerns of Mr. Goodman to my supervisor. He acknowledged those concerns and asked that this item be moved forward to the SFMTA board for their approval.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Do either of my colleagues have questions for either party? All right. So as I'm trying to assimilate what I'm hearing and reading over the documents, it looks like this started off as a complaint to ethics that was then referred to us. And I think that's part of the reason that a lot of the testimony from Mr. Goodman was sort of bigger picture and not focused on the very limited scope that the Sunshine Task Force oversees. It seems from listening to the respondent that the Sunshine claim is really about posting for this meeting, and I think that there's been evidence, significant evidence, to demonstrate that that meeting was notified. It appears there's also sort of a legal who's covered by what law discrepancy that I don't think any of us are prepared to negotiate without our city attorney here. Does that seem like a pretty good summary of what you guys heard?
Sure.
Cool. All right. So let's go ahead and hear rebuttals from both parties, and then we will move to make a motion.
I'm never quite sure what I'm supposed to rebut since I was the last person speaking. But no, I don't think there's really anything much more to say on this because, as you stated, Chair Wolf, the focus of this hearing is whether or not the admin code, the Sunshine Ordinance, was violated, and clearly, as you acknowledge, that it was not. There are other substantive issues that the complainant has. However, that is not before you today.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Goodman?
I would only mention here that I didn't complete the item under 67.7-1, the effect, it says under there under item B, the effect of the proposal or activity. That's something that an engineering document that they've submitted to the public and handed out from their traffic engineers division doesn't show enough in terms of the effect to the community where they're contesting this or looking at this. The SFMTA response cited Transportation Code Section 202 regarding the posting of notice on 2 utility poles. So, I mean, that's something they did on the November 3rd hearing. They did not, she's stating that we're not required to do it for the December 5th SFMTA full board meeting. My concern with this is like the planning commission meetings. You have a planner who has a project, he notifies the community about it, they have a chance to send comments in, and then it goes to the full planning commission, but that meeting is also duly notified. There's at least an effort or an ability for a community member to submit comments at more than one's position in this whole process. With this project, it went to the traffic engineer, then went to a private little meeting, then went to approval to the full SFMTA board. That's the concern, is that there's not a chance to get, or in the December 5th meeting was not duly noticed, was not posted, was not notified to the petitioner, to myself as a property owner, to people, seniors that are maybe disabled in the Jewish home. I don't know who was notified officially for the December 5th meeting besides posting it on the internet. But with a lot of people that have language concerns and disabilities in the area that are seniors, I would have a question about why they didn't just repost it in the same place they posted originally. It makes perfect sense. It would have alleviated any problems here. And then I would have been able to come to that other meeting on December 5th and spoken about the issue in front of the full SFMTA board. I feel like my voice on the issue was silenced. I submitted a lot of emails regarding specific concerns, and I spent the time and effort for that November 3rd hearing to highlight the concerns. And the secondary memo was about safety issues. There was another email I forwarded, has to do with the traffic speed in the area. There is nothing in an engineer's plan that dealt with the traffic speed in this area. So I don't know how they even thought that they should approve it at that November 3rd or move it to the December 5th board. So that's where there's a disconnect that I'm not seeing a solution by the SFMTA or how they actually go about this in a proper way so that people have the ability to go attend and speak on the issue before it's implemented.
Right. Thank you. Member Eldon?
Excuse me, sorry, I have a question or two. I think what they're saying that we're stuck on is that you might not agree with how they do notifications for the SFMTA, like full board meeting, but that is what's in the code. So they didn't like, you may be entirely right that it would have been appropriate, like for the community benefit, to put notices up on telephone poles and mailers in various languages to the people who might be affected. But they're not, my understanding is that they're not required currently by law or city ordinance or anything to do that, which leaves us in this position of saying, you may be right, but there's not a visible violation.
I understand the position of your statement here, that it seems like that's the only recourse. My concern is that this is something that maybe the supervisor's aide can then rectify in terms of public meetings or public hearings. If that's not under the purview of you, I understand that. It's just I think that this whole process did not work accordingly, and it's a very large and impactful project in the district and on that street. So
I would note that at least as far as the Sunshine Ordinance is concerned, there have been various efforts which have been building steam over the years and decades even to amend the Sunshine Ordinance. There are various groups, Friends of Sunshine, for example, that are working on that. They may be, in terms of the governance of this in the future, that may be a better recourse than what we're able to do.
So one last point before we move forward with a motion, which is that this will appear in front of the full Sunshine Task Force when we're able to schedule it. And I think you were able to recognize that the scope that we're involved with is very narrow, and that when you make your testimony at a follow-up meeting, explaining how this parking is going to affect the street is very important to you. I understand that, but it has nothing to do with our purview, and so you can save that time to really focus on just the Chapter 67 issues that are really the only thing we can care about.
I'm well versed on those issues. That's why it's always good to come to this committee first and hear the input from you, all of you, on this. Thank you.
Great. Is there anyone that would like to make a motion on this item? So I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to find jurisdiction and refer it to the full board without recommendation one way or another.
Kind of abdicating our responsibility, though.
I don't believe it
You
is
don't have to
actually.
send a recommendation.
Oh, farewell then. Okay.
I'll second that. I do second that.
Wonderful. Is there any public comment on the motion? Y'all aren't public, so you can't really make a speech right now. So let's go ahead and call the roll.
On that motion, Member Eldon.
Aye.
Eldon, aye. Member Fisher.
Aye.
Fisher, aye. Chair Wolf.
Aye.
Wolf, aye. The motion passes. This matter will be referred to the full task force for hearing. Next on the agenda is item 6, announcements, comments, questions, and future agenda items.
I don't have anything. Either of my colleagues.
No.
Victor?
Next on the agenda is adjournment, and just like to note that today is Member Eldon's last meeting with the task force.
Wait, I thought we were all on stop loss for holdovers or something that we have to all.
My wife didn't allow me to participate in that.
But I thought they filed a stop loss on you that you can't leave.
Mayor Breed will be knocking at your door to keep you in service.
Not after my last vote.
Yeah.
I think the Sunshine Ordinance would need to be amended to
What?
do that.
May we adjourn the meeting?
Yes, please.
We will adjourn the meeting with thanks and gratitude to Member Eldon.
Cheers. Adjourned.
Been a pleasure.